looking?
You're live.
Good. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome along to today's council meeting being the 13th of December 2022. Just a couple of formalities I'd just like to go over prior to commencement here today. That this public meeting is being recorded to improve access to the meeting for our community. The recording will be published and will be retained by council in accordance with council's legal obligations. As a visitor in the public gallery, your presence may be recorded. Would you please stand for acknowledgement and our prayer, please? Ladies and gentlemen, I acknowledge that we're hosting this meeting from the lands of the Bangarang people. I also acknowledge the traditional custodians of various other lands on which we walk here today and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people participating in this meeting. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and celebrate the diversity of Aboriginal people and their ongoing cultures and connections to the lands and waters of Victoria. Opening prayer. Ladies and gentlemen, Almighty God, we humbly ask Thee to bless and guide this council in its deliberations so that we may truly preserve the welfare on the people whom we serve. Amen.
Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll quickly go down the contents page and get through this meeting reasonably quickly. We'll move to item 5, which is acceptance of leave and apologies, granting of leave of absence. And mine is a leave of absence, and normally I wouldn't do this because I'm not missing a council meeting, but we do have an extraordinary meeting to accept our annual report next Monday that I will not be here for. I'm on annual leave with my family, and so I need to get the approval of my fellow councillors. Could I have a mover, please, to move Councillor Fuller and Councillor Benton to second that? Are there any questions on that? Take that as no. All in acceptance, and that recommendation is carried. Thank you. I'd like to go down to item number 7 on our order of business, which is the confirmation of the previous council minutes from the last meeting in November, and I look to Irene Grant.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. They're just a couple of very, very minor changes to the last minutes. And the first was in the report that I gave, and it should be, this meeting is a way that I as, not was. So that, just a very, very small typographical error. And later in the report around question time, it should read Kevin Polton, not Kevin Polter. So that needs to be, and there was just some questions I had around Councillor Herring's report, which I have had discussions with him individually, and I'm satisfied. Yes. So just with those small typographical changes, I'm happy to move the minutes.
Move that recommendation with those changes. Councillor Fitzpatrick, you agree with Councillor Grant's changes as the seconder? If there's no further questions on the minutes, I'll put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour? And the recommendation is carried. Thank you, Councillor Grant. Conflict of interest, item number 8. There are a couple here tonight, so we'll just go over and list what these conflicts may be. I'll go to Councillor Fuller, please, item 15.3.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I have a material and general conflict of interest with item 15.3 due to a family relationship and a working relationship with the applicant. And I'll leave the room for that one.
Thank you. Councillor Fitzpatrick, you had one when we were talking, but you now no longer have a conflict with item 15.1. I'll move to our CEO.
Thank you. I have a material conflict in item 13.2, the CEO employment policy as it relates directly to conditions of employment for the CEO.
Thank you. Director Brinley.
Similarly, I have a conflict of interest in that I report to the position of the CEO who stands to potentially gain benefit from the policy.
Thank you. So I'll just make note that during item 15.3, Councillor Fuller will step out of the room, and in relation to the CEO and Director Brindley on item 13.2, they just will note their conflict again, but not stay out because they're not voting on the items. So we'll move down the order of proceedings, and I'd like to go to presentation of reports. Now, obviously, because I'm not attending the meeting on Monday, I'd like to read out my mayor's message under the annual report. So this could take a couple of minutes, so bear with me. It is my responsibility as the Mayor to present the annual report to a council meeting and to report each year on council's progress in implementing the council plan. Given the timing of receiving final approvals from our external auditors, the annual report will now be presented at the unscheduled council meeting next Monday by the Deputy Mayor, as I will be on leave. I'll also point out that the Deputy Mayor will become, as of Sunday, the Acting Mayor until I return on the 18th of January. So I'd like to take this opportunity to provide my statements on Council's progress over the last financial year in advance at this meeting today. Whilst we've been members of the community, whilst we have the members of the community here in attendance. It is incredibly humbling and fulfilling to be elected to council by your community, to the position of Mayor by my fellow councillors, and to be part of an organisation that works hard to promote the advancement of our community in every decision made and step taken. The rural city of Wangaratta has continued to thrive in complex times, thanks to the existing strengths of our municipality, our people and our businesses. Our natural resources is all this part of why council is moving forward. Council has supported the wellbeing and resilience of our diverse communities through the year through a variety of outreach programs. These range from the incredible Grit and Resilience program that supports mental health and suicide prevention to the implementation of outdoor eating and entertainment spaces that provide business with much needed extra capacity. We have also continued to award grant funding to local community groups to assist them in growing their services and membership, providing valuable opportunities for social connection. I would like to acknowledge the work of all volunteers across the municipality, and working with you is one of my highlights as the Mayor. On the capital works front, we intentionally trimmed back the budget last year following several years of significant capital investment. 2021-2022 also saw the construction industry experiencing challenges in the availability of workers and materials. That being said, Council prioritised accordingly and delivered $20.8 million of new upgrades and renewal work. A key achievement included the completion of the regional play space and park hour in Apex Park, and it's been fantastic to see this space being enjoyed by so many of our community. Despite the weather challenges that are presented this year, the development was designed for its location and to withstand flood events. It has, with minimal damage, but some tidying up and cleaning required. Other significant capital works included upgrade lighting at North Wangaratta Reserve and the new commercial hangars and taxiway upgrades for the Wangaratta Aerodrome. The stewardship of Council to maintain our existing buildings and infrastructure for the use of future generations is also crucial. Annual works programs such as the gravel resheeting and road reseal programs, plus renewal programs for footpaths, drainage, curb and channel and buildings were also completed as part of this budget. Environmental sustainability and climate change preparedness is increasingly on the minds of our community. Council adopted a climate mitigation and adaptation policy last year, detailing the objectives, processes and roles and responsibilities for employees and councillors regarding climate change. We continue to implement actions in the Environmental Sustainability Strategy Action Plan and installed solar panels on the council depot roof. Council officers also undertook work to transfer council's power supply to renewable energy sources, and this will become a reality from July 2023. Council's advocacy strategy paid dividends last year when some really impactful projects securing significant grant funding. This makes sure hard-earned ratepayer dollars go a lot further. In particular, it has been exciting to see the development of both the Ned Kelly Glenrowan Heritage Project and the Prosecco Road Master Plan. These projects have received a combined $6.7 million in grant funding from the Victorian Government. They are a testament to the everyday work of council officers in reviewing and adopting master plans and strategies, and of budgets being done with focus on interest and vigour. I would like to thank my fellow councillors for their time and support of me particularly, and for getting on well as a great council. I'd like to also appreciate them in their advocacy work. I'd also like to thank our community for your input into council over the past year. The ideas and visions shared, as well as your feedback and opinions, are important in building or in guiding a municipality towards the best future we possibly can. I'd like to thank CEO McGrath and our management team here at the table today for your commitment and interest shown throughout the year and across council service and putting up with all us councillors and especially me. I look forward with confidence in the prosperous future of our municipality. Thank you. All right, we'll move down. Item number 12, Executive Services.
Mr Mayor, sorry to interrupt you. I'd just like to move to have your report noted in the minutes for us, please, given that you won't be present next week.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Benson. All those in favour? Thank you, and the recommendation is carried. Thank you, Councillor Fuller. All right, we'll move to Executive Services, and I'd like to point out 12.1, which is the Annual Report, Community Asset Committees. CEO McGrath, please.
Thank you, Mayor Rees. This report is providing our annual report on the activities of our community asset committees as required under the Act. We have 14 of those groups managing various assets across the community on our behalf, and there's a report attached that gives an outline of some of the highlights and activities that some of those groups have been conducting at the facilities that they manage, and that is there for Council to note.
Thank you. There's no questions from the gallery on that. I'll look for a mover. Councillor Grant. Councillor Fitzpatrick as a seconder. Any councillor like to talk on the recommendation? I'll look to you, Councillor Grant, as the mover.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. All I want to say to this is the importance of those facilities, and without the support of the community that run these facilities, we'd have a lot more work to do, and we certainly acknowledge the work of the huge band of volunteers to maintain these very, very worthwhile community facilities, and in most cases they're actually the hub of that particular community, so they're valuable beyond just words on paper. So I'm happy to move that and also to acknowledge the work of the volunteers in supporting these facilities.
Thank you, Councillor Grant. Any other councillors like to talk on the recommendation? No. I'll put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour? And the recommendation is carried. I'll move to 13.1, which is the appointment of councillors to committee, and I look to Director Brindley, please.
Thank you. So at the November council meeting, councillors were appointed to portfolios for the year ahead, and that included having 2 councillors allocated to a few portfolios. So this report is just a bit of a tidy up following that to then formally appoint councillors to the reference groups and advisory committees that relate to those areas where we have more than one councillor in the portfolio. There are slightly different terms of reference or charter for community reference groups or advisory committees, which is why the recommendation has 2 sections. What I'm looking for is a nomination of 2 separate councillors, one as convener of the Business and Industry Community Reference Group and one as the convener of the Environment and Sustainability Community Reference Group. And then subsequent to that, Councillor Fuller is already appointed as chair of the Arts, Culture and Heritage Advisory Committee, so we would be appointing Councillor Grant as a councillor member of that advisory committee following her appointment to that portfolio. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the gallery? Can I look for a mover, please?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mover with just a few small changes and inclusions. Under point 1, appoints Councillor Irene Grant as the convener of the Business and Industry Community Reference Group. Point 2, appoints Councillor Jack Herry as the convener of the Environment and Sustainability Community Reference Group. Point 3 notes that I continue as chair of the Arts, Culture and Heritage Advisory Committee, and notes a change to the name and amend the appropriate charter accordingly to the Arts and Culture Advisory Group as per the portfolios, and appoints Councillor Grant to that amended advisory committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fuller. Happy to second Councillor Fuller's recommendation there added on. Thank you, Councillor Fitzpatrick. Baby moment. Yeah. Are there any questions from the gallery? No. Would anybody like to speak on the recommendation? Councillor Fuller, Councillor Fitzpatrick as the seconder. Any other councillor? No. Put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour, and the recommendation is carried. The next item is 13.2, is the Chief Executive's Office Employment Remuneration Policies. CEO, could you please again state your conflict?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just reinforcing that I have a direct interest in this matter as it relates directly to employment conditions and remuneration of the CEO.
Thank you. Director Brindley, your conflict please, and then please start the report.
Yep, my conflict is that my position reports directly into the CEO, which is the position addressed by this policy. However, as the relevant qualified member of staff on this topic, I am permitted to speak on it.
Thank you. Continue.
So this is a small update to the Chief Executive Officer Employment and Remuneration Policy Review. There's just 2 changes proposed really to bring that policy in line with sector standards relating to termination period, and also for allowing for the appointment of an independent consultant or advisor for any future recruitment process for the CEO position. So the recommendation is that Council adopts the revised CEO Employment and Remuneration Policy attached to the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Brindley. Are there any questions from the gallery? I'll look for a mover, please. Councillor Grant, and a seconder. Councillor Benson. Councillor Grant, did you need to talk on the recommendation? Councillor Benson, no. If there's no further questions or speaking on this, we'll put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour? And the recommendation is carried. Thank you. Councillor Fuller, your microphone is on. Thank you. I'll now move over to community and infrastructure. We'll go to 14.1, which is the C36995 cleaning contract, and I'll look to Director Goonan, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report is presented to Council to award the provisions for cleaning services for nominated council facilities. The contract term is an initial 2 years that can be extended by Council for a further 2 years through 1-year options. The recommendation is that Council awards the contract to SSX Group, authorise Chief Executive to sign and seal all relevant documents, and discloses the contract price.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the gallery on this? No. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Fuller and Councillor Benson to second it. Councillor Fuller, any talk on the recommendation? Councillor Benson? No other councillors want to talk on the recommendation. I'll put the recommendation on the vote. All those in favour, and the recommendation is carried. Thank you, Director Goonan. 14.2, updated terms of reference for appointments.
I'll just do that price.
Sorry,
first.
disclose the price. What was it?
It's $925,803.90.
Lovely. Thank you.
2 years.
Over 2 years. 14.2 is the updated terms of reference and appointments to the Sports and Recreation Advisory Committee.
This report is presented to Council to seek endorsement of the updated Sports and Recreation Advisory Committee terms of reference and to seek endorsement of nominations from the community. The Sport and Recreation Advisory Committee provides advice to Council on matters pertaining to strategic planning, support and advice together with the management of sport and recreation opportunities throughout the rural city of Wangaratta. Nominations were received for the Sports and Recreation Advisory Committee are assessed against the skills matrix. The skills matrix is based on existing involvement in sporting groups, organisations, interest in sport and recreation, etc. And interviews were held with representatives of Council and Council officers. The recommendation is that Council approves the updated terms of references, appoints 3 persons to the nominated positions, and advises all applicants of Council's decision.
Thank you. If there's no questions from the gallery on this issue, I'll put the recommendation for look for a mover, Councillor Benson, and a second, Councillor Bustle, both on the advisory committee there. Councillor Benson, would you like to talk, please?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. This is probably the first time that I can remember being on this council with had excess applicants for positions on an advisory committee, which is wonderful to see the community wanting to be back activated, activities in relationship to sport and recreation. And it's a bit humbling of me being the chair to be able to have those wanting to be on the committee going forward. I'll just ask the question, is the Sexes from applicant's name now? or after we put the motion.
After? Or it can come now, can't it? Yeah.
No.
Okay, after. So we'll put
So, it was just a good experience to go through in relationship to, I was the one on the panel that did the interview, and it was a very strong applicants that come forward that were eager to be on it and put their input into the advisories and recommendations to council. Thank you.
Great. Councillor Bustle, do you want to talk on the recommendation?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Okay, any other councillor like to talk on the recommendation? I'd just like to talk quickly on it. I've watched this Sport and Rec committee develop over the last X amount and must commend by having Councillor Bent and Councillor Bustle on it. It's a very active group. I know Councillor Bent meets regularly with our Sport and Rec people here at the council, and that does make processes go a little bit better and easier when you're approaching the community and certain things that pop up. So I'd like to commend them on their job. It's being an active part in that Sport and Rec group. Well, in that case, I'll put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour? And the recommendation is carried. Councillor Benton, will you tell us who are now on?
The successful applicants was Rodney Dean, Margaret Christensen and Daniel Ward.
Okay, very good. I'll move to item 14.3, which is the C37711 Nordics Lane Bridge reconstruction.
Thank you, Dean. This report is presented to council to provide details on the tender evaluation and recommendations to award the contract for Norby Lane Bridge reconstruction. The existing bridge over the 15-mile creek at Norby Lane in Myree was damaged during a recent flood event. The damage was significant enough that access to private properties was stopped for some time, and temporary access is now being constructed. This project is part funded by disaster recovery funding arrangements through the federal and state governments. This funding will only fund like-for-like works, and therefore councils still are required to fund some of these works. The recommendation is that council approve the budget request for $265,698.65 from a future year's bridge program, which is council's contribution. Award the contract for the bridge construction to Haring Constructions, authorise the Chief Executive Officer to sign and seal relevant documents and disclose the contract price.
Thank you, Director Goonan. If there's no questions from the gallery, I'll look for a mover of this, please. Councillor Benton and Councillor Bustle. As a seconder, Councillor Benton, did you want to talk on this?
I need to say that it's a very vital piece of infrastructure for some of the people that live in that area. It hasn't got access to his property, so it's probably an urgent requirement.
Thank you. Councillor Bustle.
Yes, yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm very proud to be part of a council that can get on and do jobs as quick as this one. This bridge was only washed out a little over a month ago, and here we are now onto the job. And we have significant flood damage in the Rules here, Wangaratta, and the other thing I'd just like to ask is that people just be a bit patient with the council in the repairs that we have to do over many, many months ahead. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Benton. I'd also like to point out is the Northey family up there that have been not being able to get into their property over the period of time. I know they have a temporary arrangement there now, which is fantastic, but I'd like to thank them for their patience. They were super patient on this issue when they couldn't get their vehicles into their own dwelling because of this bridge being washed out. So thank you very much for your patience, and now that the job will be done, it'll be much better access to your property. Thank you very much. Councillor Benton, as the mover, did you need to finish? No? I'll put the recommendation of the vote. All those in favour? And the recommendation is carried. Thank you, Director Goonan. 14.4, the price. It's already on there.
No, it's not. That's just council.
Oh, sorry, just council. Sorry, the price of the whole project.
The total project price is $508,630.57.
Thank you. We'll go to the 14.4 then. C299 Nick Kelly project graphic design variation.
This report is presented to council to provide a recommendation to approve a contract variation to the Ned Kelly Glenrowan project graphic design portion, including a budget variation request. Due to an increase in scope in the works, to better enhance the visitor experience within the Ned Kelly Glenrowan project. The graphic designer and ARTC and Heritage Victoria signage requirements, council officers have moved to appoint an additional consultant to this project to better to give better cohesion to the multimedia and project teams throughout. This report relates to a contract variation for an existing procurement award which was approved under CEO delegation. Under Council's procurement policy, as the variation now takes the procurement above the CEO delegation, Council approval is required, and hence we're at this meeting. The recommendation is that Council approves the budget variation request and transfers $64,000 in savings from Capital Works project marketing and branding, approves the variation of the contract for the Ned Kelly Glenrowan project graphic design, adjusting the revised contract value to $507,126, and authorises the Chief Executive Officer to approve the variation.
Thank you, Director Gooden. No questions from the gallery on this. We'll move forward, look for a mover. Councillor Benton and Councillor Fuller. Councillor Benton, anything to talk on this?
I'd only like to say what has been explained to me. It's going to improve the outcome of this facility and make it far better user-friendly going forward, and which will be a godsend when it does eventuate and we can open it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fuller, need to talk? Any other councillor need to talk on the recommendation? We'll put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour, and the recommendation is carried. We'll move to 14.5, which is the Merrill Park retaining wall construction. Director Gooden.
This report is presented to Council with a recommendation to approve a contract variation for the Merrill Park retaining wall. This report relates to a contract variation for an existing procurement award which was approved under CEO delegation. And again, this variation has taken us over the procurement levels, and hence we are at Council for award. The recommendation is that Council approves the budget request of $250,000 from the long-term financial plan already allocated to this project in a future year. Approves the variation to the contract, adjusting the contract value to $852,426, and authorises the Chief Executive to approve.
Thank you, Director Gooden. There's no questions from the gallery. We'll look for a mover of the recommendation. Councillor Bustle and Councillor Herry to second it. Councillor Bustle, anything to talk?
What I'd like to say, Mr Mayor, is that this is a fairly important job given all the landslides we've seen in recent times with the wet, so I think we're very fortunate that we're doing the work now. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Any other comments from councillors? No. We'll put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour, and the recommendation is carried. Thank you, Director Gooden. We'll now move on to item number 15.1 under Sustainability and Culture, and I look to Director Swart for your introduction, please.
Thank you. The Youth Council Advisory Committee provides a voice for young people to engage with Council and our community. The report seeks endorsement of applications recently received for membership of the 2023 Rural City Wangaratta Youth Council Advisory Committee. 12 applications were received in total. One of those applications was withdrawn. So that leaves 11 remaining applicants, and the recommendation is for Council to appoint all 11 of those applicants to the Youth Council for next year.
Thank you, Director Swart. No questions from the gallery. I'll look for a mover. Councillor Fitzpatrick, and a seconder, please. Councillor Grant. Councillor Fitzpatrick, did you want to talk on the recommendation?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. This is probably one of my favourite items we get annually. It's great to see the diversity of young people coming through who want to participate, and also the ages. I think it's fantastic that we're getting some young ones, but some ones in senior school too. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other council like to talk on the recommendation? We'll put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour, and the recommendation is carried. I'd like to move on to item 15.2, which is the Clarks Lane proposed residential development.
Thank you again. Council has received a proposal to rezone and develop land near Clarks Lane for residential purposes. Specifically, the proposal includes amending the Wangaratta planning scheme and an application for planning permit. The amendment of the planning scheme seeks to rezone land from low density residential zone to general residential zone and to rezone part of Tagura Park from public park and recreation zone to public use zone. The planning permit proposal is to subdivide land into 240 residential lots, amongst other things. The proposal will allow for the development of 248 new residential lots serviced by an innovative integrated water management facility. That facility will treat wastewater and make the treated wastewater available for irrigation at Tagura Park and the nearby school. The proposal will also serve a wider catchment than just the 248 proposed lots. So that will enable other nearby developments such as those in our south growth area to go ahead. And in total it allows for 350 lots to be serviced by that facility. The application process will comprise of a number of stages, and the stage that we are looking at tonight is the first stage in that process, and that is for council to consider whether the proposal should be submitted to the Minister for Planning for authorisation to prepare and proceed to public exhibition of the proposal.
Thank you, Director. Are there any questions from the gallery? Can I have a mover of this recommendation? Councillor Bustle and Councillor Herry. Put you in there. Councillor Bustle, you want to talk on the recommendation?
Yes, Mr Mayor, because of the location of this area there, with significant sporting facilities and education facilities there, and being on the south side of Wangaratta, I think this is one of the most exciting projects to be looked at in a long time in Wangaratta, and I hope it progresses well through this process. So, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Any other councillors there? Councillor Herry?
Thank you, Mayor Rees. I find this proposal perhaps also an exciting one. I find it a really interesting one. It's an interesting, I guess, response to circumstances which have developed over recent years. The report outlines a couple of those primary strategic circumstances. There's obviously a housing shortage situation, which rules here Wangaratta is not unique in its situation. And of course there are constraints in infrastructure and wastewater, which has I guess brought about a dynamic and lateral approach to how we can handle wastewater and how we can continue to strive towards the strategic direction of our previously arranged growth areas, which are currently constrained by that infrastructure constraint. I guess I just want to highlight that there are some unique aspects of this specific proposal. It's close proximity to some sporting grounds and some park areas where there could be a high utilisation of recycled water. That brings that I guess the feasibility of that integrated water management solution and the waste treatment plant neatly into play, and that's perhaps somewhat unique to this location. But I want to highlight, I guess, some of the other arguments made in the report around the strategic justification for considering this planning scheme amendment worthy of at least exploration at this point. Some of those points perhaps might stand against other blocks of land, notwithstanding they'll have their own unique considerations, but things such as avoiding underdevelopment, I think for me is a really significant point that jumps out of the report, because obviously we're looking at a low density residential parcel of land that's progressed, that the proposal is to consider a general residential zoning of that land. I think in the strategic context of Wangaratta, which is a really land-constrained municipality, striving to maximise the utilisation of our land is incredibly meritorious. So I just want to highlight, I guess, that it's not only a quality unique to this parcel of land. I want to also highlight the fact that this is a really early stage in a long process. There will, as many people may have identified already, there's a lot to be fleshed out with this proposal. There's a lot to be fleshed out with the treatment plan. There's a lot of mandatory community engagement to go through and community exhibition periods. So this is really early days for this proposal. On balance, I'm in support of this stage of the proposal. I will definitely be keenly watching for that community input coming in through the exhibition process and looking at how the developers can continue to modify the proposal as all the details and information comes onto the table to ensure that they're absolutely delivering on that concept of net community benefit, even perhaps exceeding our expectations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Herring. Other councillors like to talk on it? Councillor Benton, please.
Thanks, Mayor, Mr Mayor. In relation to considering this proposal, which when you read the report, I must admit I'm a little bit nervous with one of these amendments and planning permits all going through together. And I realise that at the start I will support the motion because of the recommendation. However, I would like to point out that in the steps going forward, there's a lot of other avenues that, example, the EPA have got to be able to provide that the proposal is sound going forward. And I'm saying this in relationship to other parcels of land that are around the similar area will help them also get into their development scheme in a far quicker method than possibly with the constraints that the North East Water have in relation to sewage. There's another part of the thing that I think, and no detriment to the planners at all, and I've mentioned it earlier, is in relation to the traffic study, which I find is going to become a little bit more impact out that way. The traffic actually under the statutory controls, there's a lot of words at the end of the day. And I think we've got to have to start addressing some of the things in the planning scheme that give us a little bit more teeth to make force other authorities to make sure they do what they are going to do in relation to the traffic movement in that area. Because that road out there is a big road, to control road. It's outside council's control. And we're going to be able to make sure the traffic flows a lot better. But when you read the report, there's not a lot of direction that comes out of the planning scheme. That's all I'd like to point out, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Benton. Before I go back to Councillor Bussell to end off, if you so as the mover, I'd like to state that a number of years ago we developed a residential strategy, and we're finding it hard to fulfil that strategy and take it to its nth degree. We listened to Councillor Herring saying we've got a house shortage. We haven't. We've got a land shortage. So and hence comes the house shortage. This development, and I strongly believe back when we did our residential growth areas should have been included in our residential growth areas, so we wouldn't be going into this process either. That's my personal opinion. It would have squared that area off beautifully next to a school, residential development next to a school, very smart thinking. However, this is a way forward here. It will help us deliver this land strategy because we are short on land and because of external influences outside of our control is creating this opportunity to come forward, which I think is a good thing. So I suggest to all my councillors, I horribly recommend that we move forward with this project and vote yes to this recommendation. Councillor Bussell, as the mover, you have the right of reply.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. One of the main reasons why I stood for council 6 years ago was because all my life I believe Wangaratta grew way too slowly, on average building 29 houses per year for most of my life. And because of the good work that our administrators did for a few years, we're then in a position for the council now to grow this city. And it's truly amazing the growth we have here in Wangaratta now because of the work of the administrators and the good work the council we're having now. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. So I'll put the recommendation on the vote. All those in favour? And the recommendation is carried. Thank you, Director Swart. We'll move on to item number 15.3. Councillor Fuller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just redeclare my conflict of interest regarding this matter in relation to material and general employment and relationship in family ways to this matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Please vacate yourself, Councillor Fuller. Thank you. So 15.3 is a planning application, pin out 22/003, use of development of land for a childcare centre, medical centre and boundary realignment of 53 Warland Road and 10 Vista Drive, Wangaratta. Director Swart, please.
Thank you. The report is presented to Council to determine the planning permit application for use and development of a childcare centre and medical centre at the address already stated. The application has been processed in accordance with the Planning Environment Act, including notice of the application and also referral to authorities. Officers have undertaken an assessment of the application against the Wangaratta planning scheme. That includes an assessment of the objections received during notification. We received 8 objections during notification, one of which has been withdrawn. And because of the number of objections, the council has to decide this application. In completing that assessment against the Wangaratta planning scheme, considering submissions and also responses from referral authorities, officers recommend that council issue a notice of decision to grant a permit subject to conditions.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the gallery? No, can I look for a mover, please? Sorry, I'll do my public question first before I look for a mover. So there's a question from a Rosalie Burton, read this pin application 22/4003. What is to be done about parking at this project does not meet the requirements. So if it goes ahead, it will force cars into our quiet little cul-de-sac where kids play and a lot of retired people live and make it hard to get in and out of people parking in front of our homes. A lot more traffic coming and going. Please refer to my email on the 9th of the 9th, 2022. Response there. Director Swart, are you happy to respond to this?
Yes, thank you for the question. The application has been assessed against the requirements of the Wangaratta planning scheme and meets the car parking requirements contained at clause 5206 of the planning scheme. Specifically, the medical centre proportion of the proposal provides one more space than required, and this is used to offset the childcare centre, which provides one less space than required. This does not completely rule out the possibility that some vehicles may park on street.
Thank you. Now, can I look for a mover of the recommendation, please? I'm happy to move it. Councillor Benton, I'll take yours as the mover. And Councillor Bustle will second it. Councillor Benton, did you want to talk on the recommendation?
Yeah, in supporting this, and I'll probably repeat myself in relationship to the traffic management and the guidelines that the officers are going to go by, probably in short, it passes all the statutory requirements, but I'm doubtful whether at times it passes a pub test. Because in relation to your parking, this will give you a perfect example where it says, I think 12 parks, I think it is, or 11 parks for the education side, and in the same report it tells you there's going to be 20 staff. So we've got a deficiency straight away on that side of the parking. But under the guidelines, it qualifies. So if we did refuse it, it'd be able to be obtained in VCAT straight away, specifically because I think in the future we're going to have to really maintain a little bit of a throughput of traffic, because you're going to have another probably 150 car movements twice a day in that area going forward, being on the corner. So I'm just trying to probably not have a rod from my own back down the future years, because in Wangaratta we have a few anomalies, in my opinion, where they've placed some of these education facilities in probably not the best place you put an education facility, because of traffic movement that has upset the locals that live there, and going forward. So it may be a requirement going forward that we have to look at some of the car parking policies in relationship to these developments.
Thank you, Councillor Benton. Councillor Bustle, did you have something to say?
Yeah, firstly, Mr Mayor, I'd like to acknowledge the objectives, and change is always very difficult. And in my role as a councillor, to weigh up the benefits of the deficiencies for the objectives, but also the need for establishments like this in the community. And so it's a balancing act, and I think the value of a facility like this is very, very important to Wangaratta in that growth area. So I'm going to support the motion. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Herring.
Thank you, Mayor Rees. We definitely certainly do need both childcare facilities and medical facilities. I also want to acknowledge the objectives, and a lot of the objections were around that that theme of car parking that Councillor Benton elaborated on quite well. I similarly acknowledge that it does just bang on meet the minimum requirements as per the specific provisions in the planning scheme. However, I do struggle to see how it will produce a smooth and comfortable experience for users, especially at peak periods. I mean, I just looked to our own Children's Service Centre, which I think has a similar capacity of around 125 odd as this one, which is proposed at 122, and it's got close to double the car parks, at about 45 or 47. I don't quote me on a precise number, but it's almost double. Notwithstanding, I appreciate there are other operations that function out of that centre, but they certainly wouldn't be as intensive on car usage in those windows as pick up and drop off. On the car park thing, I can't help but feel that the planning scheme is trying to motivate away from car usage, which I absolutely wholly support, 100%. So there's a push to try and reduce the convenience of that. However, there's a lack of rising to the challenge on the other hand of providing mandatory requirements and really motivating serious active transport infrastructure. I mean, like the roundabout that this site is situated on doesn't even have pedestrian crossings at all of the legs. So you've got to walk around this huge roundabout to get to the childcare centre. If you're, just across the road sort of thing, it's quite ridiculous, really. And then this whole precinct, which is slated to have, close to or as much as 5,000 people in population, development potential of 5,000 people, doesn't in the precinct structure plan necessarily have a really robust active transport network built into it. So that's just a general observation of why I think we find ourselves in this frustrating predicament, but as Councillor Benton mentioned, it meets the minimum standards with that respect. Thank you.
Thank you, any other councillor like to talk on the recommendation? Right.
Well,
Councillor Grant, please.
Well, yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I just wanted to echo Councillor Herring's concerns, because I think already with the development that's occurring on Cruise Street and at that roundabout, it's now quite obvious the increase in traffic and traffic coming from all sorts of directions. And I guess to add to it with a facility right on that particular corner, it certainly raises concerns for me. And while the planning scheme says that the minimum standards are being met, I think we're going to have an issue in terms of what's going to happen at that particular roundabout as all that development grows into the future.
Thank you, Councillor Grant. I'd like to point out, before coming back to Councillor Benton as the right, for the remaining of the land and the land being developed on Cruise Strait, we do have DCPs for certain infrastructure projects for the future, and that could include maybe walk paths across major roads. The upgrade of Walland Road will eventually be done as all part of it, widening of all that. And I don't like the word the minimum requirements. It meets the requirements, just at that. This is probably our busiest and biggest development area that Wangaratta has seen in the last 20 years. I look at the road, we spent $10 million on constructing to get people out to this area. This is going to be the biggest growth area that Wangaratta has ever seen, with, as Jack said, I think around 5,000 parcels of land. 5,000. I can see this is one of many more childcare centres to come for the future out in this zone and area, and of course that is the great encouragement of people to come to Wangaratta now. We all know that children go to childcare on a more regular basis than what they ever have, because the cost of living is super high. They need both incomes to support, so people have to go to childcare. So we want this great lifestyle and living in great areas and beautiful big houses, etc. It's got to be affordable. People have got to go to childcare, and Wangaratta will grow with more childcare. So we all know there's a 200 person waiting list in childcare just in Wangaratta that we know of. So I fully support this recommendation and moving forward and hopefully getting the job done ASAP and get more people into childcare. Councillor Benton, to finish if you like.
Thanks. I'd just like to reiterate some of the comments you did make in relationship to we are desperately short of childcare and mining facilities in Wangaratta, and it's one of the things that really swayed me to support the motion. But I will say, we all drive at 100, and that's the maximum you're allowed to drive, so the minimums can be taken the same way.
Thank you, Councillor Benson. I'll put the recommendation to a vote. All those in favour? And the recommendation is carried. Thank you. Could you get Councillor Fuller, Councillor Bustle?
Thank you.
So thank you. We'll now go on to item number 17, which is 17.1, which is the annual community performance assessment. And the recommendation is that council notes this report. Can I have a mover for that, please? Councillor Herry, and a seconder, Councillor Fitzpatrick. Councillor Herry, do you want to talk on that?
Just briefly, thank you, Mayor. I'll just note that the assessment came out with generally quite positive self-assessment by the committee members against how the committee is performing its function compared with the charter in terms of reference. I'll also just note the comments regarding exploring ways to support councillors to fully engage in the audit and risk committee. It's definitely a dense and advanced specialised area, and I certainly take those comments on board. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Fitzpatrick, no further comment from councillors. I'll put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour, and the recommendation is carried. We will now move on to public question time, item number 21.
Thank you very much. I'll be out of sleep for long.
Goodbye. Good night. Public question time. I'll just point out a number of public question time situations that I just want to make sure that is noted on camera for future people coming to our council meetings, that we have, number one, we have a limit of 2 questions per person. Number 2, there is this, you need to stand forward. Maybe this is you, Anne. Stand forward, state your name and where you're from. Number 3, we need to make it clear that what is your question. Number 4, questions are not, if not submitted by 10 a.m. in writing for it to be read out on the day of the meeting, it may be refused by the chair. Number 5, questions may be disallowed in accordance with our governance rules. Number 6, questions are to be relevant to council. Number 7, no disparaging comments about any individuals, including staff, and no names to be, that was number 9, number 7, and no names to be mentioned during council meeting, whether it's council staff or outside people who you may be talking about. Number 8, there'll be no debate, follow-up comments or questions without going through the chair, which is the mayor. And number 9, no discussions between gallery members during the council procedure. Thank you. So I do have a number of, well, I've got a number of other questions to read before you put your hand up, please. Okay, I've got a question. Firstly, question 1 is from Peter Forsyth. Question, as a result of significant work undertaken by the Planning Department over the past 4 years regarding the urban enterprise, Wangaratta's low density and rural living zone strategy, what is the current status and the formal position of council regarding investigation areas to the south and northwest of Wangaratta? Director Swart, can I please have a response?
Thank you for the question. The formal position of council with relation to all Wangaratta investigation areas is that they are under further investigation. Council officers have been undertaking these further investigations, including consulting with relevant referral agencies, and these investigations are ongoing. Following conclusion of these investigations, a report will be presented at a future council meeting, and all previous submitters will be notified of this.
Thank you, Director. If I may read another question from Peter Forsyth. In what ways will the learnings of the recent current catastrophic flood events across Victoria and New South Wales directly inform future planning decisions? Given the perceived or the real lack of progress of the LDRZ and the RRZ, Rural Residential Strategy, has there been consideration given to seeking assistance from the Victorian Government to prioritise any overdue resolutions to create our 450 LDRZ and RRZ lots over the next 15 years? Director Swart.
Thank you again for the question in 2 parts, one about flooding and one about creating more lots in certain zones, so I'll address both of those questions. Flooding is an issue that affects the rural city of Wangaratta, and the Wangaratta Planning Scheme has a long history of riverine flood-related overlays that are modelled on the 1% annual exceedance probability historic event for major waterways across Wangaratta. The overlays do require review and revision over time, including consideration of the longer-term impacts of climate change. Council actively works with the North East Catchment Management Authority on flood-related matters and seeks their expert advice during development of any strategy where flooding is an active consideration or other waterway matters as relevant. The recent flooding events highlight the importance of having these overlays within relevant planning schemes so land use decisions can account for environmental events or risks. Council has long advocated to the Victorian Government that flooding should be considered at the state level and not at the local government level, a similar approach that is taken with bushfire mapping. This approach ensures that there is a consistency across the state, which would result in a comprehensive network of flood overlays, which is not presently the case in the state. Addressing the second part of that question, Council has sought the advice of state government on the project, but has not specifically sought their assistance in creating more low-density residential or rural living lots right now. Council will continue to follow the process of completing a strategy to provide a justification for the rezoning of land for this purpose. Future rezoning proposals will include state government involvement.
Thank you, Director Swart. I'll just read another question, and the question is, the submitter is Joanne Griffiths, and the question is, why do the early council videos appear unavailable on the headline or opening screen and not in proper order? And is a permanent record of these videos being kept, as council states that they do not fully transcribe what is said in the minutes? And referring to my previous question and correspondence with Council over 2022, has Council applied the relevant provisions of the Public Interest Disclosure Act? And if not, will it do so as it is requested? I will take it on notice that these questions will be taken on notice and answered directly, privately to Joanne Griffiths. Thank you, Joanne, for your question. Another question. Sorry, Sarah.
Just clarify.
Yes.
The response will also be published in the minutes of the next scheduled council meeting in February as well.
Thank you. Good to have that there. That the answers to Joanne's questions, you'll deal directly with her and be published in the minutes as part of the record keeping process. Thank you. Submitter is Mark Berry, and the question is, what can council do to help people with disability with a disability to access the CBD using Rowan Street, as this is the main path of travel from that side of town? This is PS mostly mobility scooters that can't fit through the train bridges. Did we have a response for Mark Berry, Director Goonan?
We do, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'd like to thank Mark for his time before the meeting as well. I got to chat to Mark about his specific concerns and addressed some of those. The main part of his question is that the new underpass that's been developed through the railway precinct by the ARTC will become the main access to the CBD, and that's quite well detailed through our walking and cycling strategy. The design of that underpass will cater for all modes of non-vehicle transport, including scooters, and we've seen, particularly with scooters, and Mark acknowledged this as well, that they have increased over time in size, and that is now causing us problems with some of our tighter areas, and Rowan Street is one of those. There's obviously the shared path network along the river, although that's not always accessible, as it hasn't been for the last month or so. And we need to continue to work on some of these choke points, as Mark pointed out, at Mackey Street and also there further along Rowan Street as you go under the rail bridge pass. We're also completing a review of the walking and cycling strategy over the next 6 months as part of our standard review process. And it's become very clear to council officers that it is a walking and cycling strategy, and it's very much focused on that, and there's a clear lack of adequate addressing of mobility scooters as they become more popular within the community, and we need to make sure that we're adequately catering for all modes of transport that aren't vehicles, and we'll look to do that in the future.
Thank you, Director Goonan. Are there any questions from the gallery? Please step forward and state your name. And follow all 9 rules, yes.
Can we add a 10th rule for a time limit? Councillors are restricted to time limits when they address motions. Is there possibilities for a time limit to be added to question time?
Yes, and your time's up, Ben.
Thank you. And I have a question in relation to flooding, if possible. Do we, when we refer to water level heights here in Wangaratta, that's based on a gauge level, isn't it? It's not based on the Australian height datum level, is that correct?
It's based on the gauge level at certain locations through the river system.
Yeah.
Which is then based back to a 0 point, but a 0 point for NEPA, if you like, as opposed to the Australian datum points.
Yeah, because Victoria doesn't as a whole use the datum points as a reference, does it?
I would have to get back to you to clarify that. I don't believe that's right. Yeah, I believe you're right though.
Yeah, sorry, just
Some of the New South Wales ones, it's confusing,
Yeah.
flag late on sea level.
yeah. So
Is the one that throws you a fair bit.
and this has just come about through history that New South Wales is moving to use all their reference points as the same reference so that they can predict the water levels moving further down rivers, etc. Whereas Victoria seems to be lagging behind on that. But when you try and look at Wangaratta as a whole, there is nothing that actually tells you what those gauges are based at. So that's where the question comes from.
Only one question there? No, thank you. Thank you for your public question. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're drawing to the close of our meeting tonight. I would just like to make a few points as we close. To my fellow councillors, thank you for your support through 2022 and the support moving forward with Councillor Bustle and myself as the Mayor and Deputy Mayor. We look forward to doing the right thing by the rural city of Wangaratta while I'm away. So Merry Christmas to you all. To my directors, thank you too for your support throughout the year and your attentiveness, especially to me. I'm saying this now because I'm not at the next council meeting to finish off. Councillor Bustle will take the reins. So I appreciate that. To my CEO for the phone calls at 8 o'clock at night and 6 o'clock in the morning and things like that, trying to get things sorted out. I do that to Stephen Swart and I do it to Marcus as well. Sarah, you're the only one that misses out. So thank you for always returning my calls and getting back to me so attentively. I do appreciate it. But the person that I look forward to seeing every day when I come in here to the office, and Brendan, it's not you, is Rebecca Gollier up the back there. So to Rebecca, thanks for the great work you've done for me through the year, and I look forward to seeing you in the new year. And yeah, we really do appreciate the great job you do, especially for me. I can't do it without you. So thank you very much for that, and Merry Christmas to you too. So ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to officially close the meeting at just on 5 or 10 past 7 there, and thank you for your attendance online, and to the objectors, sorry, not to the objectors, to the people that turned up here in the audience, thank you for coming along too, and we look forward to seeing you, or I look forward to seeing you in the new year, and look forward to seeing you back here at council meeting next Monday under the reign of Councillor